Most people still call it Changi, though nothing of the old airport remains. If you stood here in 2025, you would have seen rows upon rows of metallic aircraft, control towers scraping the humid sky, and polished glass terminals flashing pulses of light towards the azure horizon. You would have seen jet bridges and taxiways stretching toward the sea, a gateway to the connected world. Efficient, predictable, grounded, in every sense of the term. Now, 273 years later, you look up, and the sky is carved with orbital lanes, shining with motes of light. Ships rise not with artificial wings, but on coherent beams, propelled by ionized plasma streams. The eastern skyline glows with the silhouettes of launch gantries, taller than any skyscraper the old city ever managed. Higher still, the silver thread of the equatorial skyhook, arced across the blue, no more easily discernible than a scratch on glass. The press called this place the point where the Earth ends and the solar system begins. But it was not always like this. People forget how small the beginning was, how human, how unmistakably air-conditioned. Back then, despite its cramped land and tropical monsoons, the island was already a global hub of trade, travel and research. Then Terminal 5 opened, a full 1,080-hectare space dedicated for its construction. A marvel of sustainable engineering and design, it eclipsed all other airports the world had to offer by a large margin. Everyone thought that was the pinnacle. They didn't know what was coming. By 2037, the first point-to-point suborbital spacecraft were taken off. It started slowly, as these things do. Short skips between continents, experimental hops that ended with alcohol and nervous laughter. Then the technology matured and the arcs grew steeper. Flights graduated from simple kinematic motion to full orbital revolutions, circling the planet again and again. It was obvious the old aviation model was dying, and Changi, sitting almost perfectly on the equator and built on the logic of connection, recognized the future forming on the horizon. The coastline of the island aligned perfectly beneath the world's fastest spin, close enough that reaching orbit required less fuel, less risk, and fewer compromises. Every launch from Changi stole a little extra momentum from the planet itself, as if Mother Nature gave departing ships her blessing. The old airport planners never intended it, of course, but the same location that once made long-haul flights efficient now placed Changi directly under the geostationary corridor, allowing for essential satellites to hover motionless above Earth's turning face. When the first orbital tether was sketched, this alignment mattered. When the early launch towers were raised, it mattered even more. And when the skyhook's anchor point was chosen 2 centuries later, it was the only place on the planet where finance, engineering, and the Earth's rotation agreed. Here, gravity, geography, and ambition all pointed upward. The city did the rest. The government rezoned the entire eastern area for aerospace. Old runways were lengthened, widened, then erased and rebuilt into something new. By late century, Changi wasn't even an airport anymore. Aircraft were a minority, and launch shuttles were all the rage. As Singapore lay beneath the forest of gargantuan infrastructure. By 2091, the Equatorial Launch Corridor was established, a global network of coastal launch megatowers near the equator, perfectly situated for reaching low Earth orbit. Magrails ran like throbbing veins beneath the reclaimed shoreline, feeding overloaded cargo to towers that punched through cloud layers. Plasma ducts stitched the upper atmosphere into invisible lanes, guiding early shuttlecraft along faint ionized paths that glowed in the dark. From orbit, the whole project looked like a tiny gem of light, sparkling against the relative darkness of the Earth. The first tether segments went up not long after, in the exosphere of the sky. They started modestly, test filaments dangling just far enough past the Kármán line to prove mathematics right. Then came thicker carbon fiber strands, rotating counterweights, stabilization rings, and crawling climber prototypes routinely maintaining the alloy. From over a dozen nations, engineers argued over stress loadings and damping, while politicians resisted liability over any potential casualties. But the project held. The tests came back, neutral at first, then more optimistic. By the time the equatorial skyhook officially linked surface to space, people had stopped asking whether it was possible, and started asking, what do we build next? At the center of it all, that narrow band of coast kept doing what it had always done, moving people, moving goods, and turning transit into identity.